Welcome, buds, to my new deck tech show on YouTube. This is the inaugural episode of Fresh Tech, or Fresh Techs. Fresh Techs are going to be videos that will feature deck techs submitted by new patrons of my brand new Patreon, which will be in the show notes. This is the first time I'm ever announcing it. I'll probably go into it on the podcast, Fresh and Buds. If you haven't listened, take a listen. But for the inaugural episode, I will be talking about one of my decks. This is a Levia Shadowborn Abomination deck that I like to call Fresh Meat, Tommy Fresh, Ravenous Meataxe. So that's kind of the idea with this deck. Why run Ravenous Meataxe? You might be wondering. Well, we're kind of on the defensive plan with this deck. It runs a lot like, some of the Romping Club versions of Levia we've seen, where you're kind of very defensive until you kind of really try to close out the game. Now, the only difference with this is, well, we're running Ravenous Meataxe. We're running Ravenous Meataxe, well, because getting the 5 points of damage randomly sometimes is kind of cool. And I like the fact that it is filling up our graveyard. It was in the pre-con Blitz deck, and that's kind of what I fell in love with Levia. So I've kind of been, all in ever since. So the important part about this deck, the most important thing to know, is that you have a game plan and you want to be sticking to it. So the game plan here is basically you want to be defensive for most of the game until you find that you can swing the tempo in your favor and then kind of start getting the engine going. What is the engine? The engine is once you have your graveyard filled enough and you're ready to kind of swing tempo, you can start banishing those cards and putting the blood deck cards into your banish zone and then turning them off with Levia, so you never have to worry about the blood debt. This is the beauty of Levia. She has very high rate cards, high rate brute cards, but they have blood debt, and they are very graveyard hungry in order to kind of keep them going. So you want to be able to kind of fuel that and then close out the game and make sure you're not killing yourself with blood debt along the way. So your defensive plan that you're kind of starting out with here is usually blocking a lot and kind of filling up your graveyard and then kind of saving at least one card or maybe two cards. You always have the option to save that like yellow and kind of come in with the Ravenous Meataxe, or if you're able to save two cards, maybe you can save a yellow and a Command and Conquer per se, and you can kind of hit even more with a nice little 6 attack at your opponent. And we even have some swing bigs in there too, which is awesome. A great plan to do early on, especially since they don't require you to banish anything from your graveyard, which is nice. When you're turning on this engine in this deck, is kind of when you're trying to put your opponent away. You want to, kind of output enough damage on a consistent basis that your opponent can't really ever regain tempo, and this is when you are the victor, which is, obviously the goal. We want to win. So this all being said, you want to kind of find a way to kind of regain tempo. So what's one of the best ways to regain tempo in this deck? Well, it's one of the cards that is a great reason to play Levia to begin with. It is Carrion Husk, the chess piece. Blocks for 6. That's so easy. You don't even have to get rid of any cards in your hand to block 6 damage in a turn. It's so efficient. It's really good in the meta right now, and I don't see it ever really getting terrible. It's an excellent card, and it is a great way to regain the tempo. And just so naturally with the Carrion Husk that when you block with it, it does go to your banish zone, and it has blood debt, and you have to start worrying about the blood debt anyway at that point. So it's a great time. Turn on the engine. Use your Carrion Husk smartly. You really don't want to use it too early, or you definitely don't want to get to the point where you have to block inefficiently with it and before it's too late because they got you down too low of a life total. So be mindful of that. Another way to kind of regain tempo is if you've been efficiently using the defensive plan to your advantage, kind of getting this incremental damage throughout the game, and you've really just like over time snowballed into a life point advantage. They've used, you know, their important equipment or whatever on the other side of the field, and at that point, you know, you could just say, well, now it's time to just put them away. So you kind of just start getting in with these high rate Shadow Brute cards. And then another way you can kind of find a way to gain tempo is kind of recognizing when your opponent has an off turn. These off turns happen, especially in like high variance decks, like even Starvo or Viscera have these off turns. Like Viscera could have all non-attack hand, and they just play one non-attack and then come in with a Rosetta Thorn. I mean, you have to recognize that's an off turn from them, and maybe it's time to take advantage of that. So here's some important things to know when the engine starts, First of all, you won't be blocking as much once you get to this point, because you're going to need to get to a point where you can banish every turn, or mostly every turn, so that you're not accruing a bunch of damage from your own blood debt. So that's worth noting. So if you're in a position where that doesn't seem so great, maybe kind of reevaluate if you really did get the tempo. This is something that will kind of happen naturally based on the way you play, but make sure your graveyard is filled to a certain point, and also make sure that the ratios of sixes to non-sixes is pretty good. Sometimes that can be hard based on how you block in your hands, but always be willing to kind of count your graveyard, kind of get an idea of the ratio of sixes to non-sixes, just so that you know your chances when you're going for those banished threes. So another thing to know is that this deck is very much a second cycle Levia deck. So in the beginning game, when you are being very defensive, maybe also keep in mind of what you're going to be pitching, because you're hoping to see that in the second cycle of the deck. So you want to pitch a lot of yellows that are good late game. You want to make sure you get your Dread Screamers and your Graveling Growls in the pitch deck if possible, and kind of get them on the second go around for when you turn on the engines, because those cards are very important for great output of damage in the late game. And speaking of Dread Screamer, you got to learn your go wide turns. You got to learn, you know, which cards are best to play and like in which order. Dread Screamer to Graveling Growl with one blue pitch is just an amazing play that you always do, and it is a lifeblood of the deck. But also just keep in mind of what else you can go into from your Dread Screamers, and also Art of War is a huge part of the deck. Gives you some go again. If you can do the math on what you're going to need off your Art of War. Also, don't be afraid if you are a little resource hungry to choose the +1 attack instead of the go again, if you don't think you're going to be able to get 2 attacks out of your draw too. And then another important thing is knowing how to close out the game. You're going to be pitching cards like your Singleton Reckless Swing early, or your Convulsions from the Bellows of Hell early. These are good blue pitches that you're going to end up pitching early and hopefully see later in the game. They're also great ways to end the game. Convulsion is a great way to turn off blood debt and give your next attack action card. Dominate, which is, you know, obviously a great way to end the game. And then Reckless Swing is always really cheeky and fun. Always fun to win with a Reckless Swing. And I hope I hear about a lot of you winning with Reckless Swing. So all that being said, let's get into the deck. So let's talk about the main suite of the equipment for this Fresh Meat deck. First of all, we have the Ravenous Meataxe that we all know and love. 3 attack. This costs 2 to attack, and then you draw a card, discard a card, and if a 6, well, at random, if a 6 is discarded this way, it gets +2, so it comes in for 5. Nice little chunk of incremental damage. Good little breakpoint too. Next, we have in the main suite. This is what you're probably playing the most. When I say main suite, is the good old Arcanite Skullcap. You know, it's the most efficient headpiece in the game right now. I would love to see some more defensive brute action at the headpiece eventually, but we are going to be playing the Arcanite Skullcap there. We talked about the Carrion Husk already. Carry now is excellent. Blocks for 6. Goes to the banish zone. This is your tempo swing card. It's a lot of fun, and it's pretty impressive. For the arms, we're going to go with the Gambler's Gloves. I know we said we're not running the or we're not rolling the scab skins a lot, but it's just a good option there until something better comes along. I know there's the Skull Crushers, but a lot of times with high variance decks like Levia, you do kind of want that little fail-safe sometimes. And then that goes without saying that we are playing the scab skin. So this is what you're playing most of the time, most of the matchups. In the deck list that I posted or that I will post with this deck, there will be certain matchup guides for what we're playing. But so before we get into the sideboard cards and equipment, let's go into what the main deck is. The main deck is always going to consist of 52 cards. And that's what I'm going to show you right now. You are always going to board in 8, maybe 9, depending on the matchup, cards into the deck. But this 52 that I will be showing you is the core of the deck. You don't really want to change this much at all, outside of some very few niche cases. So we're going to start with the reds. This is kind of the power of the deck here. And, you know, we're going to talk about an important card right now, which we do play 3 of in each of the colors. This is Dread Screamer. Dread Screamer is an excellent card. This is the 2 for 6 go again. You banish 3 from your graveyard at random. If you hit the 6, gets to go again. This is going to be your main engine to close out the game. This gives you like excellent go wide turns and very efficient at turning off the Blood Debt as well. Another really powerful red card in the deck is Endless Maw. You know, just a powerful beater. You know, 3 for most cases, 9 damage is very efficient and good. This is the only color of the Endless Maws that we're running, as the base is 6 on the red. Another important card is the Graveling Growls, which we are running the reds and yellows. The Graveling Growl is just a 1 for a 7 at the red, and then 1 for a 6 at the yellow. Just excellent, really good to go into after both Dread Screamer and Art of War. This is a card that's really going to push through the damage for less resources than you would normally be running with. We do have one Swing Big main board, but there are 2 Swing Big sideboard, and they do come in quite often because this card's very big, obviously, and hits very hard. So I just have one main board right now, just because you don't always need the extra 2. You know, our favorite card here, the Command and Conquers, we still play 3 of them. You know, it's a generic 6 that is very good, and there's no reason Levia shouldn't be playing it. Unfortunately, it's very expensive. And then another very efficient card at red is Boneyard Marauder. It's a 1 for a 6, banishes cards, turns off the Blood Debt. This is a great card to have, you know, a nice little fail-safe too, to kind of throw in the arsenal. So those are the reds. This Levia list is not necessarily red light, but it's not as red heavy as some are. We're going to see a lot more yellows and well, I guess a lot more yellows than you'd expect, because we're running that Meataxe, and that 2 resources is very key. So a nice bread and butter card here is the Art of Wars. This is a auto include in Levia. It both gives you some new cards and turns off the Blood Debt and lets you kind of go wide, or even go bigger if you need to. And you know, if you need to play it on your opponent's turn, it's always an option as well. Just a great card all around. We are playing one Deep-Rooted Evil. This is just because it's like you don't want a lot of them. You don't want them to clog up the deck, because, well, first of all, they don't block, and it's not necessarily an efficient card. It's 3 for 6, but it does pitch for yellow. It's good to pitch early, get later, hopefully banish and it's not bad of a kind of a 3 for 6 if you can kind of play defensively into that. We are playing a play set of Mark of the Beast right here, which this card's good. It's really good to pitch early for the Ravenous Meataxe. This is a second cycle card for sure. But you don't really want to hit it off the Ravenous Meataxe because then it goes straight to the banish zone, and then you kind of accrue that blood debt maybe before you're ready. It's a risk we're willing to take because it's a good yellow to have in the deck, and you know, sometimes if your ratio in the graveyard isn't exactly where you want it to be, you know, just playing this out will turn off the blood debt late in the game, which is nice just for 2 cards. Another yellow that isn't necessarily played in a lot of lists, but we're playing it in this because we want more yellows, is Hungering Slaughter Beast. This is a card that is just another way to turn off the blood debt, and it's a yellow that has a 6 power. And then we have 2 Blood Rush Bellow main. This is a solid card. It's a little bit better when you have the claws in, which we do run sideboard. The Blood Rush Bellows are just a nice little explosive attack. Sometimes it's a good way to close out the game. And honestly, it blocks for 3, which is just totally fine. And even going Blood Rush Bellow into Ravenous Meataxe is possible to hit for 7. So it can give you some explosive turns with Dread Screamer, and even if, I mean, I've gone Blood Rush Bellow into Art of War in the same turn. It's like pretty nuts. So pretty great. The Beast Within. This is a great card. It's played in a lot of lists. This is awesome, especially with the Ravenous Meataxe, because it kind of gives you the card, a kind of advantage there with the swing in. Sometimes if it's just you have no cards in hand and you flip the Beast Within, you get the card in to your hand with the Meataxe, and you can arsenal. So it sets you up. It's just a great card overall. Blocks for 3, hits for 6, and it's a 6 in the deck. And then we did mention the Graveling Growls and the Dread Screamers. So next we have the blues. The blues aren't going to be that different from what you see in a lot of lists, you know, plus or minus some things. Here's some singletons. We do play 1 Soul Harvest. It is a 6. You know, you don't play it out a lot, but you do block with it, and it's just a fine card. Doomsday, you know, love to play Doomsday to get that Blasphemous out. It's a great way to kind of solidify yourself in the end of the game, and you know, makes decisions harder for your opponent. You know, sometimes they're like, do I kill the Blasphemous? What do I do? And then we have 1 Reckless Swing main board. We do have 1 in the sideboard. Usually you don't want 2, but sometimes if you're playing against maybe Kano or Viscerai, where blues in general are good against arcane damage, you know, the Reckless Swing is totally fine to have 2 of there, and it's a good way to close out the game, especially against Viscerai. You will be blocking with it to kind of close out the game in those situations. Next is a card, Deadwood Rumbler. Nice little, you know, blue 6. It doesn't block, but it's a nice card to attack with early if you can have 2 blues left after a defensive turn. And also if you hit a 6 off of it, it's worth knowing that it is banish a card from a graveyard. You don't always have to pick yours, but one way I like to use it is if you have some non-attacks or non-6s in the graveyards, you banish them to make your ratio a little bit better. And then we have the Convulsions from the Bells of Hell, which we had talked about. This is a great card to finish out the game, and also is a great early pitch. And you know, if need be, it is a 3 block, and also a nice little failsafe to kind of turn off the blood debt, you know, into maybe even a Ravenous Meataxe if you have to. It won't work on the Ravenous Meataxe, but sometimes you just got to turn off that blood debt. And you know, an all-star and all brute decks is Wrecker Romp Blue. I mean, what a great 6 blue. 3 defense. You know, you can't really ask for much more than that. You're rarely playing it out, but you will in some cases, and it's not a bad early play out if even if you're on the play or something like that, just to kind of get your graveyard kind of going. And then we did mention the Dread Screamers. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the sideboard. Let's talk about the equipment first. We do have the Mandible Claws. Right now, mostly they're coming in against Prism. We love Go Again in Prism against Prism, and then this is something that I probably consider against Kano, possibly. Stuff that, just maybe having more explosive turns rather than going on the defensive is this might be a better chance. But definitely for Prism, but mostly we're going with the Meataxe. Null Rune Gloves, pretty self-explanatory, usually against Viscerai, or Chain, or any kind of the Rune Blades, and then it will go in against Kano. And then I do have the Skullhorn. I've found that the Skullhorn with the Arcane Barrier 2 is pretty good against Rosetta Thorn in general. Both with the gloves and the Skullhorn, for 1 blue, you can kind of take care of that, like that 1 Rune Chant and 2 Arcane from Rosetta Thorn. It's something worth considering. I've been playing around with it, and so far I do like it quite a bit. And then finally we have the Skull Crushers. This is actually a proxy. I'm waiting on my for some reason I have one. My Skull Crushers. This is a card that I it's just when you need that 1 extra block. I find that it is a pretty efficient. I would say maybe against Katsu, or anything going really wide. Not so much tall, but the go wide strategy sometimes, just like blocking the extra 1 is a make or break for some of those decks turns. So I do like Skull Crushers there. So now we're going to talk about the sideboard cards. So I'm going to talk about each set of cards and what they're there for, and then I'll go into as of now, right now we have the big 3. We have Starvo, Prism, and Viscerai. I'm going to kind of go into the plan for each 3 of those, and then in the actual deck list there will be more plans for other heroes as I kind of test them. I will continue to update it as I test against more heroes. One of the great reasons to play a Shadow hero is to play actually the Guardian of the Shadow Realms. This is a Shadow defense reaction, 2 for 6. It has Blood Debt, but you can buy it back from your Banished Zone. This is a card that's good against anything that's trying to go tall, anything that dominate. Mostly in here for Starvo. If Starvo ends up getting Living Legend, this will probably be replaced. Maybe. There it depends on how the meta would shake up. Next we do have I'm going to go through actually all the Starvo cards here. Unmovables are definitely for Starvo, right? Just defense reaction, get up to 8 from Arsenal. Pretty good. I don't think if Starvo is gone from the meta, these will ever be in here. I would say maybe we'd see more dash, so the Arg Smashes might go in. So that's something to kind of consider. And then another Starvo card is actually, and this actually isn't just Starvo, but it will go in against Starvo, is the Sink Below. Sink Below is obviously one of the red Sink Belows, just excellent cards. This is just super efficient for a defense reaction, helps filter your hand a little bit. Very, very nice. It goes in against actually a lot of decks. I mean, anything with Winter's Wail, obviously, and also your Briars and even Viscerai and stuff like that as well. Those aggro decks, the Sink Belows are pretty great against. I did mention the other swing bigs. Those are kind of going in against basically most matchups other than Starvo, because this is kind of what you're looking at for Starvo. Just extra heat, extra beaters, and the same thing with the 1 single Writhing Beast Hulk. It's a great finisher, just to get that dominate. Just another 6 to make your ratios a little bit better in the deck. And then we also have 3 Shadow Puppetries. Shadow Puppetry is just an awesome shadow card. It's good for anything you kind of want to go again against. It goes in against Prism. It can go in against you know, some decks that, you know, you feel that you need to kind of keep up with, and that the defensive plan maybe isn't the whole idea. And then we have the third Blood Rush Bellow, which I did mention. Goes in against Prism and, you know, some other decks. You know, it's just, I mean, it's just a good 3-block mostly. Next we have Reckless Swing, the second one. Kind of goes in when you want an extra blue, or you feel like you're playing against a deck that's probably going to risk it and go to 2 a little bit more. That's a kind of something you have to feel out, and I mean, it's a great card regardless. And then we have 2 Lead the Charges. These are really for the Prism matchup, get those extra action points and yeah, whatnot. But let's take a look at, you know, you're sitting down against Starvo. This is what you're gonna do, right? 8 cards, 3 Sink Belows, 2 Guardian, 3 Unmovable. You're still playing defensive for most of this game. Basically, Starvo really wants to hit you with Crippling Crush and Oakenhold Fused, right? And when you're hit by those things, your hand gets totally destroyed. And that's really bad for Levia. And that's one of the reasons Levia in CC is a little bit tough right now. So you have to kind of keep that in mind. You got to play to that being something. So you want to make sure that you can survive the first couple Crippling Crushes and Oakenholds. So these are for that, really, and that's also another reason why you play defensive for the first half of the game before you kind of turn on the Jets. And, you know, Carrion Husk is another great way to kind of deal with those things. That would be the plan for Starvo. The plan for Prism is, first of all, putting in the claws, which we showed before, but the Lead the Charges, the Shadow Puppetries. So you got 5 there. So we're looking for 3 more to find the 8. And then you got the 1 Blood Rush Bellow. And then the 2 Swing Bigs. And then you can even probably throw in the Writhing Beast Hulk too. Just because, like, it, you know, it isn't something else that does break Phantasm. So that's pretty much the plan against Prism. I think Levia in general has a great matchup against Prism. It's just historically not the best for Prism players. And then Viserai is the hood, or not the hood, the Nullrune Gloves and the Skull Horn. You want to throw that in, and then I like to throw in that plan. I like to go Sink Belows, and then the extra Blood Rush Bellow is totally fine. It's a good block. And then you kind of throw in the Writhing Beast Hulk and the Swing Bigs. And then you can even throw in the extra Reckless Swing there. So that's a pretty good plan. I actually think that Levia has decent play against Viserai. You know, obviously Viserai has some explosive turns. But I do think that on average, if you have the right game plan against Viserai, you can really pull it out, and you know, just gotta, you know, hope for no nutso sonatas, which do happen. All right, well, that was the deck. I hope you guys really enjoyed. I hope some of you have some success with Levia. I did go 4-2 with this at the Battle Hardened in Indy, and I've done well with it since, especially in testing. I can only imagine with a Starvo-less meta, this deck only gets better because Starvo is very oppressive and not the best matchup for Levia, but I do think it can get there. But I am hoping that this deck will only continue to flourish, and I hope that you know, you all get a chance to play it and hopefully get some reps in with it and kind of just learn it. So the deck list is in the show notes, and it has a write-up on all this stuff I've talked about, and it also has some sideboard guides for certain matchups that I'm continuing to update as I test those matchups when I have time. But I hope you guys enjoyed the first episode of the Fresh Tech. I hope you guys check out the Patreon, check out the podcast, check out the Discord, the Buds. We have a lot of fun there. And yeah, please like, comment, subscribe, go check out Twitter, all that stuff. Please have a good week.